Okay, everybody, chapter 5 is called States of Consciousness. So, when we talk about consciousness, we have to be aware of what the term means. When you are conscious, that means you are aware, awake, and alert from a neurological sense. So, it's having awareness of internal events and your external environment. It can vary depending on the situation. Not only do we have consciousness, but we also have what's called an altered state of consciousness, or ASC. That is a temporary state when somebody is not fully aware, awake, and alert from an internal and external standpoint. So, an altered state of consciousness can occur when you are sleeping or dreaming because you aren't fully aware, awake, and alert, or it could happen because you've taken a substance or maybe you're under hypnosis and you aren't fully aware of what's going on. You also need to be aware of what's called selective attention. And I'm sure all of you have had experiences with times when you paid attention to one thing and you were able to not pay attention to something else. That's what selective attention is. It is being able to focus our conscious awareness onto one specific thing and filtering out all other things that might be occurring at the same time. So if you remember back to being in grade school and maybe other kids in the class were talking and you were able to focus on doing your work despite the people talking around you. Sometimes selective attention can lead to intentional blindness where we fail to notice something that's fully visible to us because we aren't attending to it. So that might be when somebody's directly talking to you, but maybe you're watching a television show that you're really into and you don't even hear anything they say. Distracted driving is another form of selective attention. This is why people who have other people in the car, or they're putting on makeup or eating or on their cell phone, all of those are distractions to your driving. You're not able to be fully conscious, fully aware, awake, and alert for what you're doing in the road if you're doing something else. So dialing, talking, texting, or reaching for your phone, talking to another passenger, doing any other activity than driving is a form of selective attention. Sleeping or dreaming is one way that we can alter our consciousness. And we all do that on a regular basis because we all have what's called a biological clock. That is our circadian rhythm. Circa means about, and D's means day. So it lasts for about a day. So we all have a circadian rhythm that lasts for about a day, 24 hours, where we start to feel tired around the same time. If you ever notice, you always go to bed about 10 or 11 p.m. That is because your circadian rhythm is telling you it's time to go to bed, because your circadian rhythm also knows, hey, in about 8 hours, this person is going to get up. So we tend to stay on the same sleep and wake cycles because of our circadian rhythm. Having an altered circadian rhythm can change your alertness, body temperature, mood, blood pressure, etc. Everybody's circadian rhythm peaks at about midday and reaches a very low point at night. Now, the question on the screen says, what about shift work? People who work on shifts, and maybe they sometimes work in the morning, sometimes work at night, they have alterations in their circadian rhythm. And that's oftentimes where those people don't end up lasting on those jobs for very long. Same way with jet lag. If you go to another country that's 12, 13, 14 hour difference from your home, time zone, then you might find that I'm sleepy right now. Even though it's morning, I really want to go to sleep. But that's because your circadian rhythm is set with your normal time zone. So people often experience what's called jet lag, where they feel tired and have to get their circadian rhythm back in sync. So, what controls our circadian rhythm is this area of the brain. If you notice there in the picture, it's very tiny. The pink area is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's a part of the hypothalamus because it receives information about light, darkness from the eyes and sends those messages to your pineal gland. And your pineal gland is the gland in your brain that releases the hormone melatonin, which is what relaxes us and helps us go to sleep. When it comes to teenagers, during puberty, there's a shift in the timing of circadian rhythms. Melatonin release is delayed, so it doesn't happen as early as it did when you're a child. So adults typically have their melatonin released about 10 o'clock, but for teenagers, their melatonin is delayed and it may not be released until 1 a.m. So if you know a teenager who likes to stay up really late, even though they have class at 7 or 8 in the morning, this could be why. So it's, a scientific thing, and this might be why they have difficulty falling asleep and getting up early. So the question becomes, why do schools start so early for teens? Maybe there's a disconnect with this type of research. So if your circadian rhythm is off and you're sleep deprived, it can impact your cognitive functioning. It can lessen your ability to get your tasks done. It can increase obesity and illness. It can affect your cortisol levels and your mood and your motor functioning. So it's very important that everybody get the right amount of sleep and they keep their circadian rhythm intact so that none of these issues or problems occur. If you take a look at this figure 5.3b, it shows you the different stages of sleep and the different stages your brain is going through. Notice when you are awake how your brain waves are. They're very tightly packed and very small. It looks very similar from the picture to what your brain looks like in REM sleep. REM sleep is your dream sleep. And when you're dreaming, you're partially, conscious. Obviously, there's activity going on in your brain. That's why it's very similar to the waking state. When you're drowsy, that's a period of time when you're starting to get sleepy. Notice those brain waves are still pretty tight, although they start to weaken. Stage 1 is maybe considered a light sleep when somebody can easily awake you, and that is also very similar to the awake state. But then as we start to get in stages 2 and stage 3, those sleep waves tend to get more relaxed, and those are deeper stages of sleep. So there are some theories about why we dream when we sleep. And here are the 4 sleep theories. For adaptation and protection, to conserve our energy and protect us from predators. So we have to sleep so that we can rest. The second theory is to repair and to restore us so that we can recuperate from our daily activities. There's also the idea of growth and development. The more sleep we get during these stages, especially of brain growth, the better. That's why a lot of babies sleep a lot. That's why young children might sleep for hours because of the brain growth. And then also the learning memory theory, that the more REM sleep you get, those peak the learning stages. If you've ever, had something that was on your mind and it kind of comes to you, the answer for how you should do something, it might be because of the learning memory theory that's peaking as you're dreaming. There's also Well, those were the sleep theories. These are the three dream theories. So, wish fulfillment. We dream about things that we wish would happen. Our unacceptable desires are normally repressed as we start to dream. There are two different types of your dream content that, according to Freud, exist. One of them is manifest content. That's what you remember about your dream. That's your storyline that you could wake up in the morning and tell someone, oh, I had a dream about this last night. And then there's what Freud called latent content. This is what he said the dream actually represents. Like you didn't just dream about going on a vacation. What does that mean that you went on that vacation? Sigmund Freud, who is one of the most popular psychologists, wrote a book called The Interpretation of Dreams, where he spent a lot of time interpreting the latent content, the thing that's hidden from people that their dream actually represents. And many people, might go online and look at what does my dream really mean? They are trying to search for the latent content outside the storyline. There's also a theory called the activation synthesis theory, which says that our dreams are our brain's way of making sense of the electronic stimulation weave that's occurring to us during REM sleep. That's kind of like the boring one, right? And then the last one is the cognitive theory, which says that our dreams are organized and can be interpreted from our waking experiences. So basically, our dreams are an extension of our day and the things that we've gone through to make memories. On this chart, figure 5.5, I want you to pay attention to the differences between the amount of awakeness, REM, which is dream sleep, and non-REM sleep that occurs based on your age. Infants sleep about 14 hours a day. That's 40% of their time. Adults only sleep about 7.5 hours, 20% of that in REM sleep. And then when you're in old age, the average 70-year-old sleeps about 6 hours, with 14% of that being in REM sleep. So as you age, the time you spend in REM sleep decreases. Here are the top 10 common dream themes. This is, from on average, what most people dream about. And I'm sure that at some point, many of you have had dreams about these things as well. And in Freud's book, The Interpretation of Dreams, he would have had an explanation about why all of these things happen. There are also some disorders that can occur when you are asleep. Insomnia has to do with having a difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. It can also be waking up too early. There's a number of people, millions of people in America experience insomnia. Narcolepsy is a condition where people have sudden, irresistible sleep attacks that occur during waking hours. And it could happen when they're standing up, when they're talking, or even when they're driving. Individuals who have narcolepsy are not able to get a driver's license because of their condition, because a sleep attack can occur at any point. There's also breathing-related sleep disorder, also known as sleep apnea, which is a disruption in breathing during sleep. It can cause loud snoring. The person can often have very poor sleep, and they can wake up feeling tired and feeling sleepy during the daytime. The only way sleep apnea can be diagnosed is by participating in a sleep study, and the treatment for it is a CPAP machine, which is the mask people often put on their face at night so that they don't stop breathing. And that, sleep apnea can be deadly if it's not cured, because during the night, a person with sleep apnea stops breathing for, short periods of time, 20, 30, 10 seconds. It could happen 100 times a night. But what happens if they don't start back breathing after one of those times? That's why sleep apnea is very important to be detected. Nightmares are bad dreams that disrupt REM sleep. Nightmares typically happen when you're dreaming, and it's such a deep stage of sleep that, it can be very debilitating when it happens. You can feel like that's occurring at the moment. And then we also have sleep terrors, which are abrupt awakenings and feeling of panic that disrupt non REM sleep. Oftentimes, sleep terror occurs in children, and when a sleep terror occurs, it's important not to try to wake the person because they're really not fully aware, anyways, of what's going on. So, what are some ways that people can improve their sleep? You can exercise, make sure that your circadian rhythm stays intact, avoid stimulants like caffeine and nicotine, especially close to your normal time for sleep. Avoid late night meals and heavy drinking, and avoid worrying and having things on your mind that might disrupt your ability to sleep peacefully. Take a warm bath, use deep breathing, um, practice muscle relaxation, yoga, pre sleep rituals. So go through the same routine before you go to bed each night. Now let's talk about another altered state of consciousness, which is drug use. A psychoactive drug is any chemical that changes your mental processes. An agonist is a drug that increases the impact of a neurotransmitter at a receptor site. An antagonist is a drug that decreases the effect of the neurotransmitter. People who abuse drugs can cause physical or emotional harm. Drug abuse can cause any type of harm to the user or to others around them. And then when it comes to addiction, a person is addicted to a substance if they require more of the substance to receive the desired effect. So if in the past you've drank 1 cup of coffee in the morning to feel awake and aware and alert and fully conscious, but now it takes 2 or 3 cups, you might be addicted to coffee. People are dependent on a drug when they desire or crave the drug in order to feel normal, in order to receive the drug's effects. You're dependent on it when you desire and crave it, when you feel like you need it. Doesn't matter the time of day. Physical dependence can can cause bodily changes, and it can cause the person to need the drug just to function on a minimal basis. If you can't think clearly without having a cup of coffee, then you might be dependent on coffee. Once a person has become dependent on a substance and oftentimes addicted to it, they will experience what's called withdrawal effects, which are feelings of discomfort and distress that are associated with wanting to stop the substance. So it could be headaches and chills and all of these negative symptoms, which oftentimes cause a person to continue to use a substance to avoid those withdrawal symptoms. A person is tolerant of a substance if greater doses are required to receive that desired effect. Now let's talk about the 4 categories of drugs. There are depressants, which are sedatives and cause the central nervous system to decrease in functioning. There are stimulants, which cause increased activity in your central nervous systems. They stimulate you. There are opiates, which are narcotics, which can relieve pain, and hallucinogens, which can cause altered states of consciousness and sensory and perceptual distortions. So our depressants are things like alcohol. They can cause tension reduction, euphoria, drowsiness, muscle relaxation, but then also it can cause anxiety, nausea, amnesia. Dependence occurs rapidly, and there's a strong potential for abuse when it comes to depressant use. Stimulants, those drugs that increase activity at your central nervous system, are things like cocaine, caffeine, and nicotine. Abuse is very strong when it comes to stimulants. They can cause euphoria and increased alertness, but then also hallucinations, psychosis, the inability to get sleep because your brain is wired. Opiates are things like morphine or heroin and codeine, oxycodone. These drugs cause euphoria in a sense of rush, but they are also oftentimes used for pain relief, but can also cause coma, death, painful withdrawal symptoms, and are highly addictive. Hallucinogens are drugs such as LSD, marijuana. They cause people to have distorted perceptions of reality. Mild delusions can cause relaxation. And some of the undesired effects are it can lead to permanent psychosis, very extreme delusions, and are very addictive and dangerous. We also have a category of drugs known as club drugs, and these are drugs that teenagers and young adults often take at clubs or parties. Things like LSD and MDMA, they're very dangerous. These are drugs that can cause permanent brain damage, permanent psychosis. They can be odorless, colorless, tasteless. So it's very important to always watch your drink and to always be aware of what you're doing so that club drugs are not slipped to you. Another altered state of consciousness is hypnosis. People often undergo hypnosis because they want to focus, they don't want any distractions, or maybe they're trying to overcome some type of phobia they have. There are medication techniques like yoga and Tai Chi that can also cause a person to focus and not think about other areas of their life. Hypnosis is considered an altered state of consciousness because it's deep relaxation. It's almost like being in a trance. And people who are hypnotized are highly suggestible if they believe hypnosis will work. And there's decreased responsiveness to pain. And people who do believe in hypnosis also oftentimes say that it actually did work and did help them. So that's everything I need you guys to know about states of consciousness. Please make sure that you also read the chapter.